Yo, what up guys, I'm Sammy and welcome back to the Soul Drop. And today we're going to be doing a top Nike, or that's what I plan to do. I was planning to do like a top 10, top 15 Nike hoop shoes, but it's kind of hard to do one because first of all, Nike's been kind of killing it in terms of performance. A lot of their shoes are really solid and pretty dang nice, which is very different from the past couple years. I feel like a couple years ago it was really bad, especially for the quality of the shoe. But this year's lineup, or I guess for like the past year, Nike has been releasing some solid performers. So I was like, yeah, it's kind of hard to put a shoe like over the other and give it like a solid, like, oh, this is a number 2 and this is number 3. You know what I mean? It's usually hard to do. Because a lot of the time, well, first of all, it's very subjective, but also a lot of the time it's pretty interchangeable in my personal opinion. So I decided to do more of like a guide, like a Nike hoop shoe guide, because again, a lot of the shoes from Nike are viable, right? A lot of them are very solid performers, but it all depends, I feel like, on what you want to feel. Like if you want a stiffer feel, or if you want a softer feel, a little bit more flexible, or if you want something a little bit more cushion, or if you want something a little bit more lower to the ground, you know what I mean? If you want something in terms of like a little bit more supportive, you know, or you want an upper that's really minimal and very thin. Do you want a shoe that's extremely lightweight, or do you not really care about that? You know what I mean? So it's pretty hard to categorize all of those different things. But I tried my best, right? And yeah, I do have 2 tiers, right? So the main thing for me is the shoe more for like guards, you know what I mean? So I have a tier 1 and I have tier 2, right? So for tier 1, of course, I have more like a shoe that has a little bit more court feels, maybe something a little bit more minimal for the upper, and also the shoe probably is a little bit softer in terms of like the sole of the shoe, right? For example, the Halley 1 would be tier 2 because tier 2 is a lot more stiff. You know what I mean? Like I can't even bend this shoe. That's a really stiff sole. The tier 1, for example, would be like the Tatum 4, where it's just, look at this, really easy to flex. You know what I mean? So it's not that one's better than the other. It all depends on what you like. You know what I mean? So again, I'll try to explain all of that to you guys because this is a Nike hoop shoe guide, like buying guide. So yeah, if you guys do want to get any of these shoes, I try to leave in the free link in the description box. And if you do choose to get any of these shoes, just help me out if you buy it through the free link in the description box. And as always, thank you guys so much for all the support. And also, if you guys have any questions, you guys can always DM me on Instagram. I try to get back to you guys on DMs. So yeah, I'm sorry if I don't get back to you. It's kind of hard to get back to all the DMs. But anyways, let's get it started right off with tier 1. So tier 1 is, again, something a little bit more guard-like, a little bit more lightweight, a little bit more responsive, better court feel and stuff like that. But of course, there are anomalies. I can't put every single shoe at that position, you know what I mean? But again, I'll try to explain all that anyways, right? So firstly, let's get it started right off with the Converse Shea 1. So the Shea 1 is probably my least favorite shoe, or one of my least favorite shoes on this list, because it was a little lackluster, you know what I mean? Like the entire shoe was like, nothing screamed, oh wow. Like I was never wowed by the shoe, you know what I mean? In every single category for that shoe, I was like, never wowed. You know what I mean? So the traction is very good. You do need to break it in, but it's really good only on a clean court. If you're playing on a dusty court, not the best. So just be careful with that. But I do like the outsole curvature that it has though, right? So that's pretty nice. But also the cushion is pretty lackluster as well. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't have amazing court feel, but it's stiff. And there is a 4-foot zoom in it, but it feels like it protrudes up, so it feels a little bit like a speed bump. So I'm not a huge fan of that, but it has a nice little compression and bounce. But again, not the greatest core feel. It's still pretty good, but it's not on par with like, you know, like the Sabrina 3 or something like that, right? But also the heel compression is not that nice either. And also the shoe is like really flexible though. Like it's a really flexible, nimble feeling shoe. So that's a good thing. But the overall weight of the shoe is freaking heavy. It's like 14 ounces or something like that, right? Heavy 13, kind of like lower 14 ounces. So it's heavy, but it's not bulky, but it's heavy. You know what I mean? So yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of the Shea 1s. But yeah, it is like in the first tier, you know what I mean? So there's that. Next, we got the Luka 77. So the Luka 77 is Luka's budget shoe, right? It's a little bit more geared towards outdoor use as well, but it's an overall pretty nice, solid performer. And in terms of court feel, it's not the best, but you do get a nice bit of like impact protection, you know what I mean? Because of the thicker foam, but it's not super bad. You know what I mean? I would even say it's like pretty similar to the Shea ones, you know? But also the traction is pretty solid. It does pick up a little bit of dust, but it's definitely not as much as the Shea one. It has a little bit better performance on dust, but also once you break it in, it has a really nice bite on a clean court. And again, the cushion, it does provide nice impact protection. It has a little bit of heel compression as well. So it's kind of plush, but for the price, it's not anything amazing, but for the price, it's pretty nice, right? And then the upper, the quality of the material is pretty bad, but once you break it in, it does get really soft. But overall, the upper does feel adequate for support. You know what I mean? So, yeah, the Luka 77, I would suggest it more for guards, and also the overall shoe is extremely flexible as well. But yeah, it's still a very, very solid, well put together shoe, right? Especially for, I think it's like $100. So there's that. Next, of course, we got the Jordan Luka 4. So Luka's actual signature shoe. And that shoe also is really, really freaking flexible, right? Really flexible. The one downside about that shoe, I would say, it is probably the upper material durability, because the material is just really thin, you know, so it doesn't seem like it'll last a long time. So just be careful with that. But the overall traction, once you break it in, is really nice, right? I would still say it picks up a little bit of dust, but I would also say it's a little bit better than the Luka 77 and a lot better than the Shea 1, right? So still pretty nice for dust performance. The cushion, however, you're very, very low to the ground, but for some reason, the Cushion 3.0 still has a little bit of heel compression, and the unfit cushion was still pretty nice, and it had like adequate impact protection, you know? So like my foot never really hurt too bad when I was playing in that shoe somehow. I don't know how though, you know, because it's just so thin for the foam. And then again, the upper is extremely thin, very, very minimal. And that shoe overall is extremely lightweight. So again, a really, really nice guard shoe, especially if you're looking for a really nimble, lightweight, flexible feeling shoe. So there's the Luka 4s. Next, of course, we got the Tatum 4, and I would say the Tatum 4 is a little bit more my speed, and I feel like it's a little bit better than the Luka 4, especially if you want a little bit more support and also a little bit more cushion, right? The traction, I would say, is pretty similar to the Luka 4s, where it has a nice solid bite, picks up a little bit of dust, right? But the cushion, although it doesn't have as good core feel as the Luka 4s, it has better cushion though. You know what I mean? So you do have a 4-foot zoom unit. I mean, the Luka 4 had a 4-foot zoom unit as well, and also the Luka 77, but they're both bottom loaded and they both have a weird orientation for that zoom unit, you know what I mean? So it doesn't really even matter for the zoom units for the Luka 4 and Luka 77, but in the Tatum 4, it's top loaded and it encompasses the entire 4-foot. So that feels extremely nice. It's like soft and offers a little subtle bounce. And then the heel compression is nice, impact protection is nice. So it's just really, it's like a responsive setup, but it's still soft and comfortable, you know? The upper also, I would say, is a little bit more durable feeling and also a little bit stiffer than Luka 4, but still really, really soft, especially once you break it in. But the quality is terrible, right? It like pills up. I don't know why Jordan Brand's using that type of material in the Tatum 4, but it does get softer. It feels comfortable on foot. And also it's a lightweight shoe as well. So there is a Tatum 4. Next, we got the GT Cut Academy. So that shoe is like 2 years old. So I feel like they should give us a GT Cut 2 Academy or GT Cut Academy 2. But you guys already know, it's a really, really great guard shoe. Amazing traction. Cushion is a little bit lackluster, but it's pretty nice for the price tag. Like you can get it for like 60, 70 bucks right now. You know what I mean? So yeah, there is a GT Cut Academy. Next, we got the Sabrina 3. So the Sabrina 3 is the epitome of a guard shoe. It feels very similar to the Luka 4, but it just has a little bit more cushion. You know what I mean? So, and also slightly better traction. Like the Sabrina 3, the bite is really nice, right? You get really good traction, especially if you're playing on a clean court. However, it picks up dust. I would say it picks up a little bit more dust than Luka 4, right? So that kind of sucks, but it's not terrible for dust performance. And then the cushion, however, is a little bit upgraded in my personal opinion compared to the Luka 4s, right? So of course you have that 4-foot top loaded zoom unit, which gives you a little subtle bounce, a little something there, right? But also you get a little bit more heel compression as well. So that's something that I like about the Sabrina 3 a little bit more. But the Sabrina 3 material durability feels absolutely terrible in the 4-foot. So I don't think this is going to last a long time. It even feels worse than Luka 4s, which is kind of crazy. You know what I mean? But it's extremely thin and minimal though. And also the shoe overall is extremely lightweight. So that's nice. And also the overall shoe is extremely flexible and nimble feeling too. You know what I mean? So there's the Sabrina 3. Next, of course, we got the Kobe 9. So the Kobe 9, yeah, actually is available. Like all the colorways are available in pretty much every size, which is pretty interesting. I don't know why they released so many. But either way, it's great. You know, Kobe 9 EM is very, very nice. Kind of sucks that it's so expensive though. But yeah, you guys already know the traction is really nice. The cushion is also pretty dang nice, but it prioritizes more of a lower to the ground and responsive feel, right? And the upper with the EM is soft and thin, but it does feel a little bit more supportive and a little bit stiffer than, you know, like the Luka 4 Sabrina 3. So you get a little bit better support there, right? But it does feel a little bit clunkier because it's a drop-in midsole and you get all that plastic and rubber on the outside of the shoe and the heel. So that kind of sucks, but still a very nice responsive shoe, right? Now that's the end of tier 1, but we have like a tier 1.5 because I actually have a couple of shoes in tier 1.5, which is kind of in the middle, you know what I mean? So first shoe is the Book 1. So the Book 1 is extremely comfortable and very, very thick for the padding for the upper in the back of the shoe. You know what I mean? So the tongue and also the ankle padding is just so plush. So I'm not saying it's bulky, but it does feel a little bit bulkier, you know, especially compared to, you know, like the Luka 4 and Sabrina 3. So because of that, that's why I put it in like tier 1.5. But because of the cushioning setup, it's really low to the ground. Yeah, you have really good court feel. So because of that, I couldn't really put it in tier 2. You know what I mean? So, and also the Book 1 is really flexible as well. It has a really nimble, flexible feel, especially in the forefoot. So, and also the traction is really nice if you get the solid rubber. Like when I was playing the translucent rubber, it picked up a lot of dust, but the solid rubber was way better for me for performance. So, yeah, the Book 1, very, very nice, very, very comfortable for the upper. Next, of course, we got the A1 as well. The Nike A1 is actually one of my favorite hoop shoes that Nike has to offer. It's really, really nice, right? But the upper is a little bit stiffer. You know, it's not bulky at all. And it's not like super cumbersome or anything, but it just has a stiffer feel than most of the shoes in the first tier. You know what I mean? So that's why I put it a little bit more in the tier 1.5. But also, the cushion is a little bit higher up off the ground. You know, it is using Cushion 3.0 and it's like really plush and soft and comfortable, but it's not like amazingly low to the ground, you know what I mean? So that's another reason why I put in tier 1.5. But yeah, the overall traction is really nice. So it's weird because I feel like it's a really well-rounded shoe that I feel like most people will like. You know, like if you are a guard, you can definitely enjoy that shoe. But also if you're a bigger dude, or I guess bigger person, it's really, really nice as well because it has nice support and nice cushion too. You know what I mean? So there is the A1. Next, of course, we got the GT Cut 3 Turbo as well. Same thing. You know what I mean? The cushion is a little bit higher up off the ground, and also the shoe, like the sole of the shoe is a little bit stiffer, but it has a really nice explosive feel to it. You know what I mean? So yeah, it felt a little bit more like tier 1 and tier 2 to me. So that's why I put it in tier 1.5. But yeah, the traction is really nice. The upper has a really it conforms to your foot pretty well, but then it has a really supportive feel too. You know what I mean? And combining that with the stiffer, more explosive like sole of the shoe, it has a really explosive, springy feel. If you like that, right? So same thing with the GT Cut 3, but I would say with the upper, the GT Cut 3 is a little bit softer, you know what I mean? So there is the GT Cut 3, and last but not least, in tier 1.5, we got the Jordan 40. So it does have maximum cushion though. It has maximum cushion. It's crazy. You know, you got Zoom X and also full length Zoom Stroll. So you got both layers of cushion, like both of those cushioning setups, and you have a lot of compression, you have a lot of bounce, right? So that's like tier 2, right? But then it's just, for some reason, the upper is like, it doesn't feel bulky at all to me, you know, even though it's like, the upper, like the leather material is like a little bit thicker than, you know, like the Luka 4 with like the textile or the Sabrina 3 with like the screen mesh, but it still feels really like nice and kind of like, I don't want to say like minimal, but like more of a minimal feel, you know what I mean? But yeah, the traction is phenomenal in that shoe. It does pick up a little bit of dust though, but overall traction is pretty dang solid, pretty dang nice. So that's why it's like more, maybe 1.75 for the tier. But the Jordan 40, again, if you want maximum cushion, that's the shoe that you get. But also it's a little bit heavier too though, in terms of weight. So that kind of sucks, but it does feel responsive though because again, the traction is nice, support's great. And I felt quick when I was playing that shoe. So yeah, there is a Jordan 40. And now moving on to tier 2, right? So yeah, we got the LeBron Next Genesis. So the one thing that I really didn't like about that shoe, however, is the heel part, right? So that heel part digs into, or it dug into my Achilles a lot, right? And it was really stiff there. So that's the one thing that I really kind of disliked. It was very uncomfortable. But other than that, like the traction is overall pretty dang solid, you know? The cushion also is really nice, you know? You get a zoom in the forefoot, you get a nice heel compression as well from the actual midsole. The overall upper, once you break it in, does get pretty soft, but it prioritizes more of like a stiffer, more supportive feel. So that's why I put it in tier 2. You know, it feels a little bit more for like bigger dudes and someone who wants a little bit more support or something a little bit stiffer, you know what I mean? So there's the next Genesis. Next we got the GT Jump Academy, which is of course the budget version of the GT Jump. And yeah, it has a little bit more of a thicker, more bulkier feel, especially because of the upper. You know what I mean? I'm not saying it's super bulky, but it has a thicker, bulkier feel than a lot of the other like minimal, lighter feeling shoes. The cushion also is a little bit higher up off the ground in terms of core feel, but you do get pretty nice cushion in terms of like impact protection. Like my foot never hurt, but obviously it's a cheaper shoe, so it wasn't like super comfortable and it wasn't like anything crazy. But yeah, it prioritizes more of like a more supportive, stiffer, well-cushioned feel. So that's why it's in tier 2. And it's a really nice hoop shoe for the price. Again, there are a lot of better options than the GT Jump Academy, but again, for the price, it's pretty dang solid. And also the traction is pretty dang nice as well. It's like a really nice bite, right? So there is a GT Jump Academy. Next, of course, we got the GT Hustle 3, but I don't really like that shoe too much. Like I would say even for most people, it's just too much cushion. I really don't know how Wemby is playing in that shoe. Maybe it's because his feet are so freaking large. Like he has a like size 25 foot that it doesn't feel unstable to him, because maybe the cushion thickness stays the same as someone like from like my size foot. And then because of that, and because his foot is just so ginormous, it still has good core feel. I don't know what the deal is there, but anyways, Wemby wears that shoe if you guys didn't know, and it's just way too much cushion, way too unstable for me personally. So I don't really like that. But again, if you want maximum, like this is the maximum. It has even more cushion than I would say like the Jordan 40. You know what I mean? So if you want that, then it's a nice option. But again, I would say it's a little bit too much for like most people. So there's that. Next, we got the KD18. So yeah, the KD18, even though like a lot of guards wear his shoe, you know what I mean? It has a little bit more of a stiffer feel, right? The overall sole of the shoe is a little bit stiffer. And also the cushion, it's not the best for court feel, but it has okay cushion. I do like the air strobe unit in the heel, but I don't like the forefoot too much, you know what I mean? The traction overall is pretty dang solid, although it does pick up a little bit of dust. The upper also, it's weird because it has a stiffer feel in like the midfoot area and also in the back of the shoe, and also a little bit more padding in the back of the shoe, but the upper in the forefoot is really thin. So it's kind of weird, but I would say the KD18 is a little bit more on like the stiffer, also like the sole of the shoe is a little bit stiffer as well. So because of that, I put in like tier 2, you know what I mean? So yeah, not my favorite shoe, but I definitely feel like there is a like market out there for the KD18 where people would enjoy that shoe, right? So there's that. Next, of course, we got the Freak 7. Same thing. You know, it prioritizes a little bit more cushion. Like you are pretty high up off the ground, but you get a lot of cushion, you know? It's really soft. There's a crazy amount of heel compression, and the underfoot cushion is very plush. However, the impact protection isn't the best because the heel is a little bit too soft. So when I was doing hard heel strikes, my foot would bottom out the cushion and hit the floor a little bit. So it's just be careful with that, but I feel like most people, it should be okay, right? The traction is really nice in that shoe though. It's very nice, but the overall sole of the shoe is a little bit stiffer, you know, compared to like, you know, the Luka 4, Sabrina 3, and also the upper, even though it does get a little bit softer once you break it in, it still has a little bit more of a stiffer feel, and also in the ankle area, it has a little bit more padding as well. So yeah, it's a little bit heavier as well, so that's why it's in tier 2. But overall, still a pretty solid shoe, especially since they reduced the price so much, and now it's more on like the budget pricing, right? Next, of course, we got the LeBron 23. So wasn't a huge fan of it because it's just so expensive. It's like $210, you know what I mean? But overall, it's a pretty nice, solid performer though. You know what I mean? Like once you break, you do need to break it in, but once you break it in, like the overall upper does get a little bit softer, you know, a little bit more nimble, but still like the forefoot's really flexible now, you know, once you break it in. But it still has more of a stiffer feel. You know what I mean? Also a little bit clunky, which I'm not a huge fan of because like in the heel, there's no exposed midsole, so it's just rubber and plastic. So not a huge fan of that. It feels a little bit clunky, but overall the cushioning setup, especially for the underfoot cushion, is soft and comfortable. And the overall traction is extremely nice on a clean court once you break it in, but it does pick up a little bit of dust, right? So yeah, it's kind of weird. Maybe I should have put the LeBron 23 in like tier 1.5. You know what I mean? But anyways, there's the LeBron 23, and last but not least, we got the Jaw 3. So maybe also for the Jaw 3, I feel like I should put in tier 1.5 because it does prioritize a little bit more cushion though. It's very, very nice for cushion. It's using a hybrid Zoom X midsole, and once you break it in, the underfoot cushion is really soft. It's soft, it's plush, it's comfortable, impact protection is great, but again, the court feel isn't the greatest, right? The traction overall is really nice, but a little inconsistent and picks up a little bit of dust, and even when I was playing on a cleaner court, it did tend to slide out just sometimes, right? And that kind of sucked even when I was playing on clean court, but again, it wasn't a huge issue, right? The overall shoe, however, it has a little bit more of a springier feel and a little bit of a stiffer feel compared to like the Sabrina 3 and the Tatum 4 and stuff like that, but still it has a nice bit of forefoot flex though, so it still has a flexible feel, but just a little bit stiffer than like the Sabrina 3, right? So and also the upper is a little bit thicker, a little bit stiffer, but still comfortable and soft once you break it in, but like again, stiffer and thicker than like, you know, the Sabrina 3 and the Tatum 4. So maybe I feel like tier 1.5 would have been a little bit better, but I would say it's a little bit more well-rounded. You know what I mean? I feel like most like bigger dudes can play in it, but also guards can play in it a little bit. But also just be careful with the cushioning setup. You know, it's a little bit unstable feeling at times. So if you want like absolute stability, then the Jaw 3 probably isn't the best option. But for me, it wasn't terrible. It wasn't a huge deal or anything like that. Just I noticed a little bit, right? So anyways, that's my guide for Nike hoop shoes. And in my personal opinion, like my favorite Nike hoop shoes, let's see. I really like playing in the A1, right? So the A1 and also the Tatum 4 is super duper fun to play in. And if I want a little bit more cushion, I would say my favorite well-cushioned setup is probably like the Jordan 40 or the Jaw 3, right? So in like the more well-cushioned, stiffer side of things, Jordan 40, Jaw 3, and if I want something a little bit more responsive and lower to the ground, it's the A1. Although the A1 still has not the best court feel, but also like the Tatum 4 as well, you know what I mean? Maybe put in like the Sabrina 3 or the Luka 4s in there if I want something really, really low to the ground. But those are kind of like my favorites, you know what I mean? So anyways, that about concludes this video. Again, if you guys want to get any of these shoes, I try to leave the free link in the description box. But that's it. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.